If I disappear today, let it be known. I never bowed to the West, I never sold my people, and I never betrayed the future of Africa. My life is nothing if not a voice against oppression. If they silence it, may you rise louder.
On a continent trembling with hope and resistance, one man stood tall then vanished. Ibrahim Traoré, the young revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, once marched through the streets with his people, defying the IMF, breaking colonial chains, and challenging the world order. But now rumors spread like wildfire. Is he in hiding? Has there been a silent coup? Or has the fight for Africa's freedom entered a darker phase? This is the untold story, the disappearance, the forces behind it, and what it means for the soul of Africa. Burkina Faso, a land of red earth, ancient rhythms, and a people shaped by resistance. In its heart once stood a soldier not yet 40, a man who refused to bow, a leader who dared to believe that Africa could be free from foreign control, free from economic slavery, free from the illusion of independence. His name, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. In 2022, he rose from relative obscurity to lead a coup that toppled a government seen by many as a puppet of foreign interest. At only 34 years old, he became the youngest head of state in the world. But unlike others before him, his rhetoric didn't stop at promises. He began to act. He expelled foreign military bases. He removed French troops. He spoke of breaking ties with the CFA franc. He redirected gold and natural resource revenue into schools, infrastructure, and food security. He aligned with Mali and Niger, forming the Sahel alliance, one that openly defied the West African regional bloc, ECOWAS, and even France. And then something changed. Assassination attempts followed, not once, not twice, but more than 18 times. He survived bomb plots, sniper setups, and even betrayal from within. Each time, the government spoke softly. Each time, Traoré stood taller. But then, in mid-2024, the frequency of his appearances slowed. His voice on state TV was replaced by ministers and spokespersons. Rumors swelled. Some claimed he had gone into hiding after an internal betrayal. Others said he was injured in an attempted missile strike that targeted the presidential palace during the Monsila incident. Some whispered that the attack wasn't from terrorists but insiders. Yet no statement came, no public denial, no official admission, just silence. And in Africa, silence speaks volumes. People began asking questions. Where is Traoré? Why isn't he addressing the nation? Why isn't he showing up at regional meetings? Is he still alive? Or is someone using his image while ruling in the shadows? To understand the weight of these questions, you need to understand what Ibrahim Traoré meant to his people. He didn't just lead a government, he led a movement. He inspired artists, students, farmers, and even elders who had long lost faith in leadership. His speeches became rallying cries. His policies disrupted long-standing foreign monopolies. His voice represented the fire of Sankara, reborn the iconic Burkina leader who was assassinated decades earlier for trying to do the same. Traoré's presence was hope, and now his absence is fear. The question on everyone's lips, where is he, isn't just about a man. It's about whether hope has been kidnapped again in Africa, whether freedom is once again being negotiated behind closed doors, whether leaders who stand up are being silently eliminated. Let's walk back through his timeline. October 2022, Ibrahim Traoré leads a second coup after LTCOL Damiba fails to stop terrorism in the country. Traoré promises security, sovereignty, and integrity. Unlike most leaders, he wears military fatigues, not expensive suits. He refuses luxury, drives through cities in pickup trucks, and talks to ordinary citizens. The streets adore him. December 2022, he announces plans to cut ties with the French-backed CFA franc. Talks begin with Russia, China, and other non-Western allies. Meanwhile, terrorist attacks continue in the north, suspected by many to be supported by foreign interests. March 2023. bomb is discovered along a highway, just hours before his convoy is scheduled to pass. A foiled assassination. No public speech follows, just a press note calling for vigilance. May 2023. French troops finally exit the country, marking a turning point. Protests erupt in cities across West Africa in solidarity. Young Africans begin referring to him as the new Sankara. August 2023. Traore gives a powerful speech calling for a Pan-African Defense Force, urging Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to stand united. Within weeks, the Sahel Alliance is formally declared. It's a defiance of a cause, and a move many believe crossed the red line for global powers. October 2023. A foreign embassy is caught channeling funds to anti-government civil society groups. The government shuts it down. No country is named, but reports hint at European involvement. December 2023. Traore disappears for 10 days. When he returns, his face looks pale. He gives no explanation. Whispers swirl of an illness, or worse, a failed internal coup attempt. February 2024. In a private meeting with religious leaders, he allegedly confesses that he is constantly monitored by foreign satellites, drones, and local informants. He asks them to pray for the nation, not for him. April 2024. News leaks of a planned coup involving military officers loyal to a former regime. They are quietly arrested. No press conference follows. May 2024. The presidential palace is attacked. An explosion is heard. No casualties reported. Government says it was an accidental rocket misfire during a military drill, but the people do not believe it. Photos of the blast area are removed from online platforms within hours. June 2024. Traore is scheduled to speak at a regional youth summit. He does not show up. A statement is read by his deputy. Since then, he has not been seen live on any platform. And now, in August 2025, the silence remains. What is happening behind the walls of power in Ouagadougou? Has the revolution been hijacked? Or is Traore still commanding in secret, waiting for the right time to return to the stage? Some believe he is in hiding by design, that he has withdrawn to avoid a final assassination attempt, that he is regrouping, planning a stronger return with wider regional backing. Others believe he has been replaced in a silent internal coup, that what we see now is a manufactured continuation, one that uses his image, but not his will. And then there are those who claim he is dead, that the silence is a cover-up, that his death would ignite unrest too dangerous for the state to admit. But no one knows the truth, and that's what makes it dangerous. In the absence of facts, fear grows, misinformation spreads, distrust deepens. Foreign media exploit the silence, labeling Burkina Faso unstable, unpredictable, ungovernable. But ask the people on the ground, the market women, the farmers, the students, and they'll tell you something else. Traore lit a fire that hasn't gone out. Even if he is gone, his spirit remains. Even if they try to erase him, the questions won't stop. Where is Ibrahim Traore? And why does the world fear his presence so much? Stay with us, we are just getting started. Ibrahim Traore didn't just rise against the odds, he rose against the entire system. And for that, he earned both admiration and enemies in equal measure. To understand the forces that may be behind his disappearance, we must examine the geopolitical landscape that surrounded him. When Traore came to power in 2022, many saw it as just another coup in a region plagued by instability. But what followed defied expectations. He didn't position himself as a puppet of any superpower. Instead, he openly challenged the economic and political structure that has long dictated African affairs. His loudest opponent, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, to many African nations, is a double-edged sword, offering loans with one hand and choking sovereignty with the other. When Traore spoke against IMF control, he wasn't just being rebellious, he was hitting the core of the global financial order. He famously asked, "How can a continent so rich be so poor?" His answer, Because Africa doesn't own its wealth. Foreign companies own the gold. External governments control the currency. Global institutions dictate the terms of survival. And Traoré was determined to break that chain. He proposed removing Burkina Faso from the CFA franc monetary system, which is pegged to the euro and largely controlled by the French treasury. He called it financial slavery. He wasn't alone. Mali and Niger supported the move, signaling a possible domino effect that could unseat decades of French economic dominance in West Africa. This single act could have shifted the balance of power on the continent. But power never gives up quietly. Foreign media quickly labeled him as pro-Russian, military authoritarian, and a threat to regional stability. Yet many of these accusations lacked concrete evidence. What they didn't understand, or didn't want to admit, was that Traoré wasn't aligning with Russia or China out of loyalty. He was simply choosing partners who didn't come with chains. And so, a media war began. Disinformation flooded the internet. Deepfake videos, fake announcements, leaked audio clips. Some claimed he was in Moscow hiding. Others suggested he had fled to a secret base in northern Mali. Some even alleged he had been poisoned slowly by someone in his inner circle. But the confusion wasn't accidental. Destabilization starts with the mind. If you can convince a nation that its leader is weak, missing, or dead, you can fracture its spirit. You don't always need tanks. Sometimes you only need silence and whispers. So, what do we know for certain? After the attempted rocket attack on the presidential palace, security around government facilities tightened dramatically. Troops no longer spoke to journalists. Rooms were blocked. Ministers canceled public appearances. State-run media limited political coverage. There was a shifted dark cloud over Ouagadougou. Privately, sources began leaking information, not from rebels or activists but insiders. Whispers that Traoré had moved operations to a military command center outside the capital, that his inner circle was conducting loyalty tests on officers, that a mole had been identified, someone close to him. And then came the strangest move of all. Burkina Faso's communications ministry launched a clampdown on foreign misinformation platforms. Social media access was limited. VPN use spiked across the country. Messaging apps like WhatsApp and Telegram were flooded with voice notes claiming everything from alien invasions to CIA involvement. The state said it was protecting national security, but the people knew something was wrong. Traoré's image was still used in graphics. Speeches were released in his name, read by others, but his face, his voice, his presence gone. So, why hasn't there been a coup? Why hasn't another military leader stepped in to declare power? Because despite his absence, Traoré's grip, spiritual or political, still holds. Many in the military remain loyal. His ideological foundation is strong, and for most citizens, even the possibility that he is alive and fighting in secret is enough to maintain hope. This is where it becomes dangerous. When a leader disappears, but remains a symbol, their influence becomes harder to destroy. It no longer depends on press conferences or televised speeches. It becomes rooted in belief, in memory, in fire. Ibrahim Traoré, dead or alive, has become more than a man. He is a narrative now. A symbol of what Africa can be when it stops asking for permission. And that's precisely what threatens the powers that be. Now, let's look at what's happening regionally. In Mali, similar moves are being made. Hutu leader Sini Goïta has aligned with Traoré's anti-French stance. In Niger, the military has rejected ICAO's calls to reinstate the ousted president and formed stronger ties with Russia and Turkey. Together, these three countries formed the *** alliance of Sahel states *** a bloc that rivals both ICAO's and Western-aligned groups. Their joint military exercises, economic agreements, and border policies have created a new axis of power, and the West is panicking. Sanctions have been placed, aid has been cut, military cooperation has been suspended. Yet none of the three leaders have bowed. Instead, they've turned inward, focusing on local production, currency independence, and self-defense. But without Traore's visible leadership, the alliance wobbles. His voice was the boldest, his words the most cutting, his charisma unmatched. So again, we return to the question, where is he? Could it be that he has chosen to retreat voluntarily, to regroup, to protect himself, to plan a second phase of the revolution? That is one theory. Some suggest he is creating an underground resistance movement, building alliances quietly, and preparing for an eventual public return. Another theory is darker, that he was captured or assassinated, and that a cover-up is in place to prevent civil unrest, that ministers are using his legacy to buy time while a new regime consolidates power. And there's yet another theory, one that terrifies those who truly love Traore, that he gave in, that the pressure became too much, that betrayal broke in, that he is alive, yes, but silenced, controlled, held hostage not by enemies in the bush, but by men in suits, that his ideals were used, and now his silence is being used too. No one knows the truth, and that is the greatest weapon his enemies could ever wield. Because in the absence of facts, truth dies, and when truth dies, tyranny wins. But here's what cannot be killed, what no missile, drone, or propaganda campaign can erase: the spark he lit in young Africans. Across the continent, youth groups still chant his name. His speeches are shared like poetry. His face is printed on shirts, walls, and flags. He reminded people that it was okay to say no, that Africa doesn't need saviors, it needs sovereignty, that dignity is not negotiable. Whether Ibrahim Traore is alive or dead, in hiding or in power, captured or underground, his presence remains. And maybe, just maybe, that's why they want him forgotten. Because if Africans remember that one man stood up and said enough, then another will rise, and another, until the continent no longer asks, where is Traore, but asks instead, who will carry the torch next? There is a war happening in Africa right now, but it's not just being fought with guns or bombs. It's a war of perception, of silence, of psychology. A war where the enemy is uncertainty, and where absence speaks louder than 1,000 speeches. Ibrahim Traore has become a ghost in his own revolution. And while many still ask, where is he? Others are beginning to ask a deeper question. What are they doing with the silence? Because make no mistake, this silence is not accidental. It's being weaponized. Every day that passes without Traore's presence fuels fear, doubt, and division. It fractures unity, invites manipulation, and gives room for foreign and local enemies to rewrite the story. Silence, when carefully orchestrated, is a powerful tool. Throughout history, authoritarian regimes and foreign puppet governments have used silence to weaken resistance. First, they silence the leader, then they silence the questions, then they fill the gap with lies, distractions, and false heroes. In Burkina Faso today, we are watching that script unfold. Every news cycle that fails to mention Traore subtly pushes the public toward forgetting. Every minister who speaks in his place gradually normalizes his absence. Every carefully edited state broadcast removes a piece of the memory he left behind. And yet, the people remember. They remember the day he walked unarmed into a market full of angry citizens and asked them what they needed. They remember the speech he gave under the pouring rain, drenched to the skin, refusing shelter until every voice had been heard. They remember his promises not to build palaces, but to feed children, not to serve power, but to challenge it. They remember. And this memory, this collective, burning memory, is the one thing they cannot erase. But how is the world reacting? Let's look at the international landscape. The West is eerily silent. No official concern, no press statements from Paris or Washington about the whereabouts of one of Africa's most disruptive leaders. If a president in Europe went missing for weeks, headlines would flood the global media. But with Traore's silence, why? Because his disappearance benefits them. His absence eases the pressure. Without him, Burkina Faso loses momentum in its anti-imperialist campaign. The Sahel alliance weakens, and the threat of Pan-African unity retreats a few steps backward. Meanwhile, the African Union says little. ECOWAS, even less. In fact, some reports suggest quiet celebration among leaders who feared that Traoré's fire would spread to their own nations. And yet, beyond the halls of power, the ordinary people are not staying silent. Across West Africa, murals still bear his image. In Accra, Dakar, Bamako, Abidjan, graffiti artists write his name beside quotes from Sankara and Lumumba. Youth-led protests continue in support of the Pan-African revolution he championed. Community radio stations play his speeches late at night like lullabies for a future still possible. But as hope flickers, fear grows stronger, because without leadership, resistance can scatter. Without voice, movements can be hijacked. And without truth, lies can become law. And this is the psychological warfare Traoré warned about. Long before his silence, he spoke of it. He said, "They will not always come for us with guns. Sometimes, they will erase us with absence. They will delete us with doubt. They will unwrite us with silence." It's happening now, and the psychological toll on the Burkina people is growing. There's a heaviness in the air. You can feel it in the marketplaces, in the schools, in the army barracks. Conversations stop when officials walk by. Smiles are cautious. Eyes are tired. No one says it out loud, but the question lingers in every home. Is he still with us? Mothers wonder if their sons in the army still fight for the same cause. Teachers wonder what to tell students who ask why the president hasn't spoken. Activists question whether the revolution was real or just a beautifully orchestrated illusion. And yet, some still believe he is fighting, just not the way the world expects. They believe Traoré has gone into a new kind of warfare, a silent one where movement is not visible, where strategy hides in shadows, where survival requires retreat. And if that is true, if he is alive, hiding not from fear but from a deadly system closing in, then perhaps the greatest weapon he has now is invisibility. But there's another possibility, a darker one, that Traoré is being held, silenced, neutralized, not by enemies in the bush, but by men in government coats. The kind of silence that doesn't protect you but owns you. Some reports suggest an internal power grab, that factions inside his government saw an opportunity to seize control during the chaos of the Monsila attack, that his ideals too bold, too dangerous were replaced with bureaucracy and compromise. Other whispers speak of betrayal, that those closest to him sold him out, that a meeting was arranged, a trap was set, and that he has not been seen since. These are theories unproven, chilling, and too dangerous to say out loud in Burkina Faso today. But they exist, and the fact that they do reveals how deep the uncertainty runs. Because in truth, the most terrifying enemy is not a visible oppressor, it is doubt. Doubt seeps into every corner of the mind. It makes you question what you believe. It makes you second-guess your courage. It turns hope into hesitation. And that is the battlefield Burkina Faso now faces, not of guns, but of belief. So, what happens now? The people have two choices. They can wait for answers, wait for leadership, wait for rescue, or they can become the leadership they once looked to. Because maybe that's what Traoré wanted all along. Maybe this silence is his last lesson. That true revolution isn't about one man with a microphone but a million voices refusing to be silenced. Maybe the question isn't where is Traoré? Maybe it's where are we? Where are the teachers who will teach truth? Where are the soldiers who will defend dignity? Where are the artists who will draw resistance? Where are the youth who will carry the fire forward? Because if we keep waiting for a hero, we may miss the moment to become one. And perhaps, in the shadows, wherever he is, Traoré is watching, waiting, not for applause, but for movement, not for followers, but for leaders. Maybe he disappeared not because he gave up, but because he needed us to show up, to carry the weight, to continue the fight. to prove that Africa's future no longer depends on one brave voice but on many. There's an old African proverb that says, "When there is no enemy within, the enemies outside cannot harm you." But what happens when the enemy within wears a friend's uniform, speaks the language of the people, and sits at the same table of revolution? As the world continues to wonder where Ibrahim Traoré, another theory gathers force like a storm on the horizon, the theory of betrayal, and not from across the border, not from imperial offices in Paris or Washington, but from within, from inside his own government, from the very men and women he once trusted to help him build a new Burkina Faso. If this theory is true, it would not be the first time a revolutionary leader was undone not by foreign bullets, but by the knives of his own allies. Thomas Sankara, killed in cold blood by those who once marched beside him. Patrice Lumumba, delivered to his enemies by the hands of those who had pledged loyalty. Kwame Nkrumah, ousted while on a peace mission abroad. Traoré would simply be the latest chapter in Africa's long and painful book of betrayed visionaries. And if he was betrayed, the question becomes, why? Let's consider the evidence. After a year of radical reforms, Traoré began to push deeper into territory few African leaders have dared to go. He wanted to create a new regional bank, one that would operate outside the control of Europe. He wanted to implement land reforms that would transfer massive foreign-held farmlands back to local communities. And he was preparing to announce the transition from the CFA franc to a national currency backed by gold reserves. This would have changed everything. It would have triggered capital flight from foreign investors. It would have sparked panic in the financial corridors of Western control. And most dangerously, it would have inspired other African nations to follow suit. To the outside world, Traoré was becoming too powerful. But inside his circle, he was becoming too independent. And that is when the whispers began. Reports of secret meetings between military officials and foreign envoys. Murmurs of frustration among cabinet members who felt sidelined by his decisions. Disagreements over the pace of reforms. Some claimed Traoré was moving too fast. Others feared retaliation from the West. Few believed he wasn't being practical. That's how betrayal starts, not with bullets, but with doubt, with conversations behind closed doors, with phone calls at midnight, with ambition disguised as concern. In early 2024, two high-ranking military officials were quietly dismissed. No explanation, no charges, just ... gone. Some say they were caught planning to leak troop movements. Others believe they were gathering intelligence on Traoré himself. If so, who were they gathering it for? Then came the attack on the presidential palace, officially dismissed as an accident. But multiple independent sources reported a missile strike launched from within the city, targeting a specific wing of the compound known to house Traoré's private quarters. That same night, all traffic around the area was frozen. Communications were jammed. No reporters were allowed within a kilometer. And since then, no confirmed public appearance. It doesn't take a genius to connect the dots. But if he was betrayed, who did it? The suspects are many. Some point to former military elites with strong ties to French command structures. Others accuse foreign embassies, particularly those that have operated with near diplomatic impunity in Burkina Faso for decades. One name that keeps surfacing is a former economic advisor, someone who once championed Traoré's gold reforms, but later went silent. Rumors say he had business interests tied to mining contracts Traoré cancelled. Could financial revenge have played a role? Another name is a deputy minister who traveled extensively in the months leading to the silence. Multiple trips to Côte d'Ivoire, unusual meetings with non-African diplomats. No clear reason for the visits. Again, no proof, only patterns. But in African politics, patterns are rarely innocent. And then there are the foreign actors. Some intelligence reports suggest that a multi-country network involving intelligence services from 3 Western nations has been monitoring the Sahel revolution closely, not just watching but intervening. Cyber interference, disinformation campaigns, funding opposition media, tracking troop movements via satellite, and they wouldn't need to assassinate Traore directly. All they'd need to do is turn someone close, pay the right amount, promise protection, offer an exit plan. The blueprint is old. What makes Traore's case different is how it's unfolding, not with a dramatic killing or a televised overthrow, but with silence, a slow, careful erasure. This isn't just about eliminating a leader, it's about erasing a symbol, replacing his ideas with fear, replacing his name with doubt. But that is proving harder than they expected, because the people haven't let go. If anything, the mystery surrounding Traore has amplified his legend. Like Sankara, like Lumumba, his silence has made him louder, and his disappearance has awakened something unexpected across Africa. In Ghana, a youth movement called We Are All Traore was born. In Nigeria, students at several universities organized symposiums discussing the Sahel revolution and the dangers of foreign economic control. In Tanzania, a documentary filmmaker launched a viral series titled The Man They Want You to Forget. This is the irony of suppressing a revolutionary. You might remove the man, but you cannot remove the idea. Even now, local community defense groups in Burkina Faso say they continue to operate under orders given before Traore's silence. Farmers speak of land reforms as if they are law. Even without enforcement, the people act as though the vision lives on. It is, in many ways, a decentralized resistance, one that no longer needs a single voice at the top to survive. It runs on memory, on conviction, on trauma. And this, perhaps, is the part his enemies never anticipated. They thought removing Traore would kill the movement. Instead, it set it free, because now, the fight is not just about restoring a leader, it's about protecting a future that, for the first time in a long time, felt like it belonged to Africa. And that's why this moment is so dangerous and so important. If Traore is alive and waiting, then every moment we hold on gives him strength. If he is held and silenced, then every day we speak his name keeps the pressure alive. And if he is gone, truly gone, then every step we take in his spirit becomes an act of resistance. So the world must understand, this story is not over. This disappearance is not the end. It may be the beginning of something bigger. The rise of citizen-led revolutions, the end of foreign control over African resources, the breaking of financial chains, and the emergence of a new generation of leaders who no longer ask permission to be free, leaders who walk with Traore's fire in their hearts, even if he no longer walks beside them. Every story builds toward a choice, a moment where the direction of everything hinges on a single outcome. In the story of Ibrahim Traore, that moment is now, because this is no longer just a disappearance, this is a crossroads. And the question before us is this: what happens next? There are two possible futures ahead. The first is that Traore returns. The second is that he doesn't. Let's imagine the first. What if, after months of absence, Ibrahim Traore reappears? He steps onto the stage, no longer just a captain or a president, but a survivor, a man who has defied the most powerful enemies, foreign and domestic, and returns to finish what he started. The impact would be seismic. In Burkina Faso, people would pour into the streets, joy, relief, purpose, the return of a symbol they had held onto like breath. Military loyalty would be restored instantly. Confidence would surge across the Sahel alliance. Mali and Niger would rise in renewed strength, and other African nations watching silently from the sidelines would suddenly be forced to choose: stay with the old system or risk everything for a new Africa. Traore's return would not just be a political comeback, it would be the resurrection of a revolution. He would become bigger than any leader Africa has seen in a generation. He would walk into history, not as a man who won a war, but as one who endured through it, strategically, patiently, defiantly. But that scenario comes with danger. His enemies will not sit back and watch him rise again. If he comes back, they will come harder. The attacks will grow bolder, the methods more brutal. Assassination attempts, cyber attacks, psychological warfare, even regional destabilization, all back on the table. So, if he returns, it must be different. Stronger alliances, better protection, smarter systems, deeper unity, because the war will only grow. Now, imagine the second scenario. What if Ibrahim Traore does not return? What if this silence ends not with a speech, but with a confirmation that he is gone? What if the whispers are true that betrayal ended him, that foreign powers silenced him, that we are already living in the aftermath? What then? The pain will be deep. The people will grieve. Many will feel lost. Some may lose faith entirely. But eventually, something else will happen. Something that has always happened in Africa, again and again. The people will rise, because you cannot kill an idea whose time has come. And Traore was not just a leader. He was an idea. He was a warning to the powerful. He was a whisper to the oppressed. He was proof that even in a broken system, someone could stand up and say, no more. So, if he is truly gone, then it becomes our responsibility not to mourn forever, but to move, to take the baton, to speak where he no longer can, to fight for what he dreamed, to make sure his silence is not the end of the story, but the beginning of a greater chapter. We must not forget that history is shaped just as much by those who fall as by those who stand. Every African revolutionary who died left behind seeds that later grew. Lumumba's death gave birth to a Pan-African consciousness that spread like wildfire. Sankara's assassination birthed a generation of activists unwilling to compromise. And if Traore has joined them in martyrdom, then it's on us to make sure he's not remembered with pity but with purpose. So let's explore what that purpose might look like. First, Burkina Faso. Whether or not Traore returns, his government will never be the same. The ministers who remain must now choose whether they carry on his legacy or sell it off in pieces. The people must stay awake, vigilant, ready to reject any attempt to erase what he started. Community defense groups must remain alert. Education reforms must continue. The idea of resource control must be protected. The challenge: there will be temptations, foreign aid offers, invitations to rejoin colonial financial systems, secret backroom deals promising peace in exchange for control. And that's where the people must rise, because leadership cannot rest in one man alone. If it does, then every time the man falls, the vision dies. But if leadership lives in the people, then no system, no betrayal, no disappearance can kill the movement. Now, let's look at the region. Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, Senegal. The Sahel is watching. Africa is watching. If Traore is gone, how will these nations respond? Will they retreat, fearing their next? Or will they double down, realizing that the only safety lies in solidarity? The hope is that they understand what's truly at stake. This is not about Burkina Faso alone. This is about a shift away from dependency toward dignity, a shift from being borrowers to becoming builders, from being ruled to becoming rulers of our own destiny. And if the Sahel Alliance is to mean anything, it must endure even in the face of loss. The leaders of Mali and Niger must stand firmer than ever. They must make it clear: we do not turn back. Now, the global impact. Make no mistake, if Traore does not return, many foreign powers will see it as a victory, a confirmation that resistance is futile, that Africa will always be a playground for foreign interests. But we can flip that script, because the greatest threat to colonial control isn't Traore's return. It's his legacy surviving without him. It's the people learning to lead themselves. It's communities feeding themselves, defending themselves, educating themselves, financing themselves. That is the revolution no bullet can stop. And that is where the global stage changes. Because when African nations prove that independence is not a dream but a decision, the entire world must shift how it sees the continent, no longer as a land to exploit but as a force to reckon with. And all of that every last piece of it now rests in the hands of the people. So, here is the truth. Whether he returns or not, Traore has already won something far greater than a seat in power. He has awakened a generation. He has shattered illusions. He has pulled back the curtain on the real enemies of African progress. And for that, he will never be forgotten. In homes across Burkina Faso, children are being named Ibrahim. In WhatsApp groups, his quotes are shared every morning. In schools, students are asking new questions, difficult questions. That is impact. That is power. That is legacy. So, where is Ibrahim Traore? Maybe he is in hiding. Maybe he is imprisoned. Maybe he is gone. But maybe, just maybe, he is everywhere now. In the chants of protest. In the eyes of a mother feeding her child with food grown on reclaimed land. In the voice of a teacher refusing to teach colonial history as truth. In the silence of a soldier who chooses justice over orders. Maybe Traore has become what they feared most, uncontrollable, undefeated, unforgettable. In the vast silence left behind by Ibrahim Traore's disappearance, something unexpected has bloomed. Not despair, not surrender, but a deeper question, echoing across the mountains of Burkina Faso, the deserts of Niger, and the forests of Congo. What if the revolution was never about him? What if the real plan all along was for us to wake up? Because revolutions are never truly about a single man. They are about the people who refuse to go back to sleep. Traore lit a fire, yes, but fires don't stay in one place. They spread, they consume, they transform. Today, across Africa, we see sparks igniting. A young woman in Kenya organizing a protest against IMF-backed school fees, a group of farmers in Benin refusing to sell their cocoa to foreign buyers at slave prices, youth in the Gambia creating podcasts in local dialects to teach people their real history, students in South Africa calling for the decolonization of their curriculum, even children in refugee camps chanting names they'd barely understand. Traore, Sankara, Lumumba, not because they read history, but because they felt hope. And that is what Traore gave us. Not perfection, not a miracle, but permission to believe again. Now, let us look at his last known intentions. Before his silence, in a private recorded address never aired on national TV, Ibrahim Traore reportedly told his cabinet, "I do not fear death, I fear regret. If I fall, do not mourn me with speeches. Mourn me by finishing what we started. Build the schools, feed the children, guard the land, and above all never kneel." That recording was leaked weeks after his disappearance. Some say it was real, others believe it was AI generated, but the words felt real, too real, the kind of real that doesn't need proof to burn inside you. And that's where we stand, not on the ashes of certainty, but the fire of conviction. So, what now? Now we move. We teach our children about our true heroes, not just the ones on currency notes, but the ones who paid in silence, in exile, in blood. We build local economies, grow our food, save in our own currencies, trade with one another, not through banks that charge us for breathing. We defend our borders not just against invaders with guns, but against ideas that tell us we are not enough unless approved by the West. We create media that tells our story unedited, unsponsored, unafraid. We organize, we unite, we vote, we resist, and most of all we never let them make us forget, because forgetting is how they win. They silence one, and hope the rest of us stay quiet. But we must do the opposite. We must become loud, in our thoughts, in our action, in our unity, in our refusal. We must become what Traore knew we could be, an Africa that no longer whispers, an Africa that no longer waits, an Africa that no longer kneels. And so, if today you feel fear, remember this. Fear is the beginning of courage. If you feel lost, remember this. Every revolution starts in confusion. And if you feel small, remember this. Every great fire starts with a single spark. Ibrahim Traore may be missing from our screens, but he is not missing from our spirits. He may be silent, but he is not forgotten. He may have disappeared, But he has not been erased, because Traore is not just a name. Not anymore. He is a question. He is a challenge. He is a warning to the powerful, and a whisper to the free. So, when you wake tomorrow, do not just ask, where is Traore? Ask instead, where am I in this fight? Because maybe, just maybe, you are the answer. If this message moved you, don't let it end here. Speak his name. Share his story. Question everything. Educate one more person today. Light one more fire of resistance in your own life. And if you believe Africa deserves better, if you believe we deserve to decide our destiny, then subscribe, like, and join this movement. Because this is more than a video. This is our voice. And the world must hear it. Where is Ibrahim Traore? Right here with us. And now, it's our turn.